Picture this. You're standing right at the net, the shuttlecock pops up, and it's floating just an inch over the white tape.
Oh, an absolute gift.
Right, an easy kill.
Ugh.
So your brain just screams lunge and smash, operating on pure biological instinct. You drop your right foot backward to, give your arm a powerful, comfortable swing path.
Yeah, the classic reaction.
You swing hard and you completely whiff. Or you hit it straight into the mesh and you just lost the point.
It's agonizing.
And the craziest part, without you even realizing it, in that tiny fraction of a second, your own brain and your skeletal structure actively conspired to lie to your muscles.
They absolutely did. It's the ultimate biomechanical betrayal.
Wow, yeah. Betrayal is the right word.
Because we walk around operating under this assumption that our sensory perception is objective. We think if a movement feels powerful, it, must be generating power.
Right. If it feels right, it is right.
Exactly. If a posture feels correct, it must be mechanically optimal. But when you introduce the extreme constraints of high-speed athletics we're talking about a projectile traveling over 400 kilometers an hour, that comforting illusion of objective physical truth just shatters.
It just completely falls apart.
It really does. The human nervous system, it prioritizes joint safety and familiar muscle recruitment over actual tactical effectiveness.
Well, welcome to your custom deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, you are the learner. You sent us a massive stack of highly technical dialogue, translated biomechanical breakdowns, and some seriously elite-level coaching theory.
Some really dense material in there.
Very dense. And we're on a mission today to completely unpack this material. We're looking at the hidden physics, the deeply weird anatomical secrets, and the mind-bending neurological illusions of elite badminton techniques.
Yeah, and even if you don't play racket sports, what this reveals about human anatomy is incredible.
Oh, totally. Yeah. How the brain processes high-speed movement, how it fabricates memory, and how you basically have to hack your own central nervous system to achieve peak efficiency. It's absolutely wild.
We are going way, way beyond just how to hit a 5-gram piece of cork and feathers.
Yeah, this isn't a beginner's clinic.
Not at all. This material is a masterclass in kinetic energy management. It details how the body attempts to protect its own rotator cuffs under immense shear forces. And it explains why the textbook technique you learn on day one is, well, it's often just a neurological band-aid to cover up underdeveloped isolated muscle control.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to pull apart the structural differences between massive, heavy, full-body smashes and the lightning-fast stick smashes that the pros use.
Right.
We're going to dive deep into the kinesiology behind what your sources call the time lag illusion, where your somatosensory cortex actually rewrites the timeline of your own physical actions.
That part is just fascinating.
It's science fiction, basically. And eventually, we're going to get to the elite hacks, like the net interceptions and core manipulations that fundamentally violate everything a beginner is taught about movement.
So let's get right into the weeds here, starting with the baseline, the anatomy of a smash.
Perfect. The documentation draws a hard, bright line between two distinct mechanical actions. You have the full smash, which the original text refers to as a heavy smash or zhongsha.
Yes.
And then you have the stick smash or dinsha. To understand anything else in this deep dive, we have to isolate the orientation of the human torso at the exact microscopic millisecond of impact for both of these shots.
That is the crucial distinction. Let's build the model of the full smash first.
Okay.
So if we look at a professional player, let's say they're in the backcourt, they've got all the time in the world, and they're winding up for a point-ending jump smash.
The big guns.
Right, the big guns. The kinetic chain here is massive. They initiate from a completely side-facing posture. The left shoulder is pointing at the net. The right shoulder is pulled deep back. The spine is rotated.
They're winding up like a spring.
Exactly. They are loading up the gastrocnemius in the calves, the quadriceps, shifting the weight. They are essentially turning the entire human frame into a torsional spring.
But the key to understanding this heavy smash is tracking the release of that spring, right?
Yes, the sequence of the release. They push off the ground, creating that initial ground reaction force, which drives the right hip forward.
Yeah.
That hip rotation yanks the core, pulling the abdominals and obliques into a violent twist. The torso pulls the chest yanks the shoulder whips the arm.
It's just a complete sequential transfer of momentum from the floor all the way up to the fingertips.
But the crucial detail from your sources is where the body ends up at the climax of that sequence.
Right, because the player uncoils so violently to transfer all that mass into the projectile. by the time the racket strings actually touch the shuttlecock, that rotational energy is entirely spent.
It's gone.
Yeah. At that exact microsecond of impact, the player's chest and belly button are not sideways anymore. They are facing dead forward, perfectly square to the net.
They have completely unwound. To get the maximum gravity moment, to literally throw their center of mass through the air and into the shot, the body has to face forward at contact.
That's the heavy artillery.
Right. But the stick smash operates on an entirely different set of physical laws, driven primarily by the severe constraint of time.
The sources outline 2 specific stick smash scenarios, and I think this is where the geometry starts getting really weird.
He does.
In the first scenario, a proactive stick smash where the player is aggressive but wants to disguise the shot, they still do a little bit of that side-facing prep.
A little fake out.
Exactly. They turn the shoulders maybe 45 degrees to fake a heavy swing or a slow drop shot. But when they strike, they abort the full rotation. They hit the shuttle when their chest is still at that 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
So half front-facing.
They truncate the kinetic chain. They deliberately short-circuit the body's natural desire to fully uncoil.
And then there's the second scenario, the extreme reactive stick smash.
Oh, this one is brutal.
Right. This happens in those terrifyingly fast, flat doubles rallies where the shuttle's moving back and forth so quickly there isn't even time to blink, let alone pivot the hips.
In those frantic exchanges, the player's body remains completely, rigidly front-facing. The chest stays square to the net.
No rotation at all.
Zero. Zero hip rotation, zero loading of the legs, zero twisting of the torso. They just lock the shoulder joint, lock the elbow to create a structural bracket, and the entire shot is generated by an isolated, violent burst of forearm rotation and finger squeezing.
Wow. So if we look at the musculature being activated there, we're talking about, what, the pronator teres and the pronator quadratus in the forearm?
Yes, acting in rapid sequence with the flexor digitorum profundus.
The deep muscles that violently curl your fingers around the grip.
Exactly. They are bypassing the pectoralis major, the latissimus dorsi, the glutes. All the massive force generators are completely taken offline.
You know, reading this, I naturally try to map it onto things I already understand.
Sure.
The full smash makes perfect sense to me. It's an Olympic shot putter.
Mm.
If you want to throw a heavy iron ball, you can't just stand square to the field and push it with your tricep.
No, you'd throw your arm out.
Right. You have to face away, coil your legs, twist your spine, and use that massive long runway of movement to generate force. But the stick smash, it's not a shot put.
What would you compare it to?
It's a fly swatter, or like snapping a wet towel. You don't do a full body pirouette to swat a fly. You rely on a tiny, incredibly sharp, highly localized whip of the wrist and fingers.
The towel snap analogy is perfect, actually. It highlights the physics of a wave traveling down a medium and accelerating at the tip.
Yeah, exactly.
The full smash uses a long lever arm to harness mass. The stick smash sacrifices the mass to gain speed and height. By refusing to turn the body and load the hips, the player catches the shuttle a fraction of a second earlier.
At a much higher point in the air.
Yes. And in a game determined by trajectory angles, taking the shuttle high and early is infinitely more valuable than taking it low and hard.
Okay, I have to stop and play devil's advocate for a second here, because my intuition is fighting this.
Go for it.
If I'm deliberately taking my chest, my back, my glutes, and my core entirely offline, how is this not just a desperately weak defensive shot?
It seems like it should be.
Right. If the power isn't coming from my body weight, how can a purely forearm-driven flick be a lethal offensive weapon that actually wins points at the professional level?
Well, we have to shift our perspective from classical mechanics like pushing a heavy object to the specific physics of striking a hyper-lightweight projectile.
Yeah.
The source text introduces the concept of muscle initial velocity. The equation for force is mass times acceleration. In a heavy smash, you're relying heavily on the mass part of the equation.
Because you're throwing your whole body into it.
Right. But a shuttlecock only weighs about 5 grams. You don't need 80 kilograms of body weight behind it to make it move fast. You need the racket head to be traveling at a terrifying speed the instant it makes contact.
Oh, I see. So it's pure angular velocity.
Pure angular velocity over a microscopic distance. The rotational acceleration of the forearm bones, the radius crossing over the ulna combined with the fingers squeezing the geometric grip of the racket creates astronomical acceleration at the racket head.
And because the radius of the muscular movement is so tight, it generates what martial artists refer to as inch power.
Exactly. It's an explosive, short-burst kinetic chain. You trade the slow, heavy mass of the torso for the sheer snapping velocity of the small joints.
That makes the physics completely sound. The logic is bulletproof. But here is where the sources throw a massive curveball.
Yeah, the disconnect.
Despite the clear mathematical advantage of staying front-facing for quick stick smashes saving time, taking the shuttle higher, amateur players simply cannot do it.
They struggle so much with this.
They desperately physically feel an overwhelming urge to turn sideways to hit the shuttle. Even when they have absolutely zero time, they try to force their bodies into a side profile. In the middle of a frantic rally, they get jammed up and they ruin the shot. Why?
Why does hitting front-facing feel so unnatural and weak to a beginner, while turning sideways feels like the absolute truth?
Exactly.
We are crossing the border from physics into physiology and neurobiology now. The sources diagnose 3 deeply ingrained reasons why the human body demands to turn sideways.
Okay, let's go through them.
It reveals how our anatomy essentially acts as an overprotective parent, basically lying to us to keep our joints safe from our own poor footwork.
The first anatomical diagnosis they make is something called the virtual forward contact point.
Right. Let's map out the geometry of a late shot. You're standing square to the net. The opponent hits a deep, fast clear. You react a fraction of a second too late.
So I'm in trouble.
You're in trouble. Now, that shuttle is directly above your head, or maybe even drifting slightly behind your coronal plane, that invisible line dividing the front of your body from the back.
Okay.
If you stay square to the net and try to reach up and hit it, what has to happen to your shoulder joint?
To reach behind my head while my chest is facing forward, my upper arm has to physically wrench backward.
Exactly.
The shoulder joint has to hyperextend. It feels cramped, vulnerable. I mean, it actually hurts just thinking about swinging a racket from that position.
You're slamming the humerus bone into the acromion process of the shoulder blade. It's a recipe for severe impingement. You have zero anatomical room to swing forward.
So what does your body naturally do to escape that pain?
It rotates. You drop your right foot back, turning your torso sideways.
And magically, the problem disappears.
Because of geometry, yes. By rotating the spine and dropping the shoulder back, you haven't moved the shuttle in the air.
Yeah.
The shuttle is still falling in the exact same spatial coordinate.
Right, the bird hasn't moved.
But relative to your right shoulder joint, you have artificially pulled your body backward by maybe 30 or 40 centimeters. You have put the shuttle back in front of your chest.
You've created a virtual forward contact point.
Precisely. Suddenly, the glenohumeral joint is open, the arm has clearance to swing, and it feels incredibly powerful and safe.
But you're just treating the symptom. The core disease is that your footwork was slow and you were late to the shuttle.
Yes.
Turning sideways didn't make you faster. It was just an emergency pressure release valve to stop your shoulder from tearing itself apart.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing tactical positioning for anatomical comfort.
That is the trap. It feels so good to the shoulder that the brain registers it as correct technique rather than recognizing it for what it actually is, a desperate physical bailout.
Which feeds directly into the second diagnosis, right? Muscle dependency.
Yes. This makes total sense if we think about how untrained bodies move. We talked earlier about the stick smash requiring violent, isolated contractions of the pronator teres and the deep finger flexors.
And most people walking down the street do not have explosive power in those specific tiny forearm muscles.
They haven't built those neuromuscular pathways. An amateur's nervous system looks at the task, hit this object very hard, and assesses its available tools.
It checks the forearm and realizes the fast twitch fibers just aren't there.
So the central nervous system panics. It routes the command to the massive, reliable muscle groups it uses for everyday heavy lifting. The pectorals, the lats, the obliques, the glutes.
If you need to break down a door, you don't flick it with your wrist. You throw your whole shoulder into it.
Exactly.
The brain is trying to bring heavy artillery to a sniper fight because the sniper rifle hasn't been assembled yet.
That is exactly the right framing. To recruit those massive torso and back muscles, the body must twist. You cannot fire the latissimus dorsi to pull the arm down without winding it up first.
So the amateur is forced to adopt a massive, sideways, long-stroke kinetic chain.
Completely destroying their ability to play fast reactive stick smashes. They are quite literally muscle dependent on the full rotation.
But the third reason, this is the one that really broke my brain when I read your sources.
The time lag illusion.
Yes. We've covered the geometry of the shoulder, we've covered muscle weakness, but reason number 3 is pure neuroscience.
It really is.
The sources call it the time lag illusion. This is where the brain essentially falsifies your own memory of what your body just did.
This phenomenon sits right at the intersection of proprioception, your body's sense of where it is in space, and how the somatosensory cortex processes time.
Okay, walk me through it.
When an amateur prepares for a heavy smash, they get into that side-facing drawn bow posture. They might hold that loaded sideways stance for maybe 2 or 3/10 of a second as they track the falling shuttle.
Which, in the realm of high-speed athletic processing, 0.3 of a second is an eternity.
An absolute eternity. So the brain heavily registers this comfortable, stable sideways state.
Okay, I'm holding the pose, I feel sideways, I feel powerful. But then the shuttle arrives.
Then the kinetic chain fires. To actually generate the power to hit the shuttle, as we established earlier, the hips rip forward, the spine uncoils, the chest squares up to the net.
But the actual physical impact of the racket strings compressing the shuttlecock lasts for, what, approximately 1 single millisecond?
1/1000th of a second. The brain simply cannot process somatosensory feedback fast enough to register the body's exact orientation during that 1 millisecond of violence.
So what does the brain do?
It interpolates. It takes the dominant, longest-lasting sensory input it received leading up to the event, which was the 0.3 of a second spent standing comfortably sideways, and it artificially pastes that memory over the moment of impact.
It's writing a false narrative.
It totally is.
It's like taking a photograph of a Formula One car speeding by. Your brain vividly remembers standing on the track, posing for the photo, feeling totally still and sideways. But the reality is, by the time the mechanical shutter actually clicks, you've already turned, uncoiled, and snapped forward. The camera captures you facing forward, but your brain throws that data out because the sideways preparation felt more significant.
The brain edits the timeline. The amateur walks away from a successful smash, absolutely stubbornly convinced, I hit that perfectly because I was totally sideways at the moment of impact.
Their brain is giving them fake physical feedback.
Exactly. So they build an entire foundation of muscle memory based on a neurological lie.
No wonder it's so hard to teach an amateur to hit a front-facing stick smash. Their brain is actively fighting the concept, insisting that sideways equals power, when in reality they've never actually hit the shuttle while facing sideways.
That illusion is the biggest hurdle in elite racket sports. You have to break a player's reliance on their own false sensory data.
I want you, the learner, to actually feel this disconnect right now.
Oh, this is a great exercise.
Yeah, if you're in a place where you can safely move, try this physical experiment. Stand up, totally front-facing. Point your chest dead ahead at a wall.
Just perfectly square.
Right. Now, raise your dominant arm like you're holding a racket up high. Here is the strict constraint. Lock your upper arm in space. Your shoulder joint cannot move forward or backward. Your bicep is frozen. Your chest cannot twist.
It feels awful already.
Now, try to generate a sharp, violent whip crack sound in the air above you entirely by rotating your forearm inward and aggressively squeezing your fingers into your palm. Do not let your torso move a single millimeter.
If you haven't trained the specific neurological pathway, it feels absurd. It feels incredibly restrictive.
It feels like you're trapped in a phone booth.
Yeah.
You feel completely neutered physically. Your brain is screaming, just let me turn my shoulder, let me use my chest.
What you are feeling in that moment is the withdrawal symptom of muscle dependency.
Withdrawal. That's a great way to put it.
You are actively denying your central nervous system the comforting blanket of the pectorals and the latissimus dorsi.
But if you can push through that awkwardness, if you can isolate that pronation, if you can learn to generate a terrifying snap of power from the elbow down while your torso remains a dead, immovable block of concrete, you have just unlocked the biomechanical gateway to the most lethal technique in the source material.
Which is a perfect bridge to our next major revelation.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
We just spent all this time establishing that turning sideways is basically an amateur survival mechanism. It's a crutch to protect a late shoulder, to use big muscles, and defeat a neurological illusion.
Right.
But what happens when an elite professional looks at that amateur survival instinct, isolates the geometry of it, and actively weaponizes it into an offensive masterpiece?
We enter the realm of the intercept smash, or as the original documents term it, Sijonwe Lungi.
The intercept smash.
This is a technique that takes everything we just learned about the kinetic chain, turns it completely upside down, and creates a biomechanical paradox that is devastatingly effective.
Walk me through the physics of this intercept smash, because at first glance, it sounds like exactly what we just told people not to do.
It starts similarly. The player aggressively anticipates a flat, fast shot. They move quickly to intercept it, and they adopt that fully side-facing posture. Left shoulder to the net, right shoulder pulled back.
Okay, we know the anatomical benefit of this. It pulls the right shoulder joint deep backward, creating that beautiful, spacious, virtual forward contact point.
Exactly. The arm is perfectly safe. It has miles of clearance in front of the chest.
Right, they get the anatomical comfort. But normally, this is the part where they violently uncoil the hips and snap the chest forward to fire the heavy smash.
But in the intercept smash, they don't.
Wait, they don't?
No. As they initiate the swing, they lock their core muscles entirely. They actively, aggressively refuse to turn their torso.
They just stay sideways.
They do not fire the hips. They do not rotate the spine. They remain completely 100% side-facing to the net, and they execute the strike from that static sideways posture.
I have to pause here because this completely breaks my mental model of athletic coaching. Every tennis coach, every baseball coach, every golf pro in the world starts by yelling, follow through, turn your hips, point your belly button at the target.
Always.
This elite badminton technique is literally telling you to freeze your body and just swat at the ball with your arm. It sounds, lazy.
It really does seem counterintuitive.
Right. It sounds like you aren't committing your mass to the shot.
Yeah.
How can freezing your core be an elite offensive strategy?
It's all about bypassing what kinesiologists call the restriction angle of the shoulder.
The restriction angle.
Let's look at the glenohumeral joint again. If you face forward and lift your arm straight up, your arm is restricted by the acromion process.
Is the bone.
Yes. But if you turn your chest entirely sideways, 90 degrees away from the net, and you raise your racket arm to hit a shuttle that is between you and the net, your arm is now operating horizontally across your chest rather than vertically above it.
Oh, wow. The geometry changes completely. The arm is no longer reaching back relative to the shoulder joint. It's just reaching across the front of the torso.
Precisely. It enters a massive, unobstructed geometric safe zone. There's absolutely zero impingement. The shoulder feels incredible.
But the real genius is the power generation, isn't it? You asked earlier how they get power without turning the hips.
Right, because we know they aren't using the massive uncoiling of the core, and they aren't totally front-facing for a standard stick smash. So where does the force come from if the body is frozen sideways?
Yeah, if the hips are locked, the massive kinetic chain is broken.
They replace the long kinetic chain with what we can visualize as a highly tensioned local bow in the upper back.
Or a pull bow.
While the hips and spine remain locked, the player pulls their right scapula, the shoulder blade, tightly toward their spine. They are intensely contracting the rhomboids and the middle trapezius.
So they're pinching their shoulder blades together.
Yes. This creates a massive band of elastic tension across the back and posterior shoulder, entirely isolated from the lower body.
They're drawing a bowstring, but the bow is just their upper back muscles.
Yes. Then they lock their right elbow in spatial coordinate to act as an unmoving fulcrum. When it is time to strike the shuttle, they micro-release that scapular tension, allowing the shoulder to snap forward an inch, which whips the forearm and fingers over that locked elbow fulcrum.
It's a catapult. The base of a medieval catapult doesn't twist or lunge forward when it fires. The heavy wooden base sits totally immobile, providing massive stability, and only the tensioned arm of the catapult snaps upward.
That is a perfect visualization.
In this case, the player's locked, sideways torso is the heavy wooden base.
That catapult analogy perfectly isolates the strategic brilliance of the technique. The stability of the base is the entire point. Let's map this onto a high-speed elite doubles rally. What is the physical consequence of executing a traditional, heavy, full-body smash?
Well, you throw your weight, your hips twist, your back leg comes swinging violently forward, your momentum carries you into the court.
And then what?
You land, and you have to spend a solid half-second absorbing that kinetic energy, untangling your legs, and reestablishing a neutral, balanced stance before you can react to the opponent's return.
Half a second in a professional rally is fatal. By utilizing the intercept smash, by refusing to turn the hips and keeping the torso locked sideways, the player's center of gravity barely moves a millimeter. There is absolutely no massive anterior weight shift.
Their balance is completely undisturbed.
The microsecond the racket strings bite into the shuttle, the player is already in a state of perfect dynamic balance. Their feet haven't crossed, their core is still stable.
That's incredible.
This allows them to land from a jump, instantly reload the exact same localized scapular tension, jump again, and fire another intercept smash with zero delay.
You literally turn yourself into a rigid artillery turret.
Yes, exactly.
The massive base of the tank stays perfectly still, locked into the ground. It doesn't flinch. Only the turret tracks the target, and the cannon fires, recoils, and instantly fires again because the base never lost its structural integrity.
you can unleash an absolute barrage of high-angle lethal attacks.
Jump, hit sideways, land. Jump, hit sideways, land. The opponent is drowning in pace because you never have to resettle your body weight.
It is the absolute pinnacle of biomechanical efficiency. You are willfully trading the maximum overwhelming raw velocity of a full-body smash for surgical precision, supreme anatomical joint comfort, and an ungodly relentless rate of continuous fire.
Okay, I am sold. The intercept smash sounds like a cheat code. It protects the rotator cuff, it prevents you from losing your balance, it allows for rapid fire. It's the holy grail. But that immediately raises my skepticism. If this rigid, side-facing, no-turn technique is so mathematically perfect, why wouldn't a player just use it for every single shot in the backcourt? Is this the magic bullet for badminton?
If human anatomy were perfectly symmetrical in all directions, maybe. But we are constrained by our skeletal architecture.
Right, there's always a catch. The source material is adamant about establishing a hard physical boundary for the intercept smash. They refer to this boundary as the iron rule of the scapular plane. If you violate this rule, the cheat code instantly becomes a catastrophic vulnerability.
Let's clearly define the scapular plane for the learner. If you're listening, think about your forward visual field. If you raise your arms up in a loose V shape, slightly in front of your chest, maybe 30 to 45 degrees forward from a straight line drawn across your collarbones, you can see your hands in your peripheral vision without turning your neck.
That's the zone.
That angled, comfortable zone in front of you is the scapular plane.
Biomechanically, that is where the glenohumeral joint is at its absolute most stable. The capsule ligaments are perfectly balanced. The rotator cuff muscles have optimal leverage.
It's structurally sound.
Your shoulder is a fortress when it operates inside that 30 to 45 degree forward angle, and that fortress is the strict, uncompromising limitation of the intercept smash.
Ah, I see.
The sideways, no-turn technique only functions safely and powerfully if the shuttlecock, your hitting elbow, and your hand all remain strictly within that forward scapular plane.
So let's say I'm locked in my beautiful sideways artillery turret stance. But my opponent realizes what I'm doing. Instead of hitting a flat shot in front of me, they hit a brilliant, towering defensive clear.
Over your head?
The shuttle travels deep, sailing high over my head, and starts dropping directly behind my right shoulder towards the back boundary line. What happens if I stubbornly refuse to tune my torso and try to force the intercept smash anyway?
Total structural collapse.
Yikes.
If the shuttle gets pushed deep into the backcourt, passing behind your body's center line, and you keep your chest rigidly locked sideways to reach that shuttle, your right arm has to physically pry itself backward, breaking out of the safe scapular plane.
You're reaching behind your own back while facing the sidewall.
You enter the anatomical danger zone. The head of the humerus bone liver is forward in the socket, violently pinching the supraspinatus tendon against the bony roof of the shoulder blade.
That sounds incredibly painful.
You cause immediate, acute shoulder impingement. Not only do you lose 90% of your mechanical leverage, meaning your shot will be a pathetic, floating, weak clear, but you are actively grinding your rotator cuff tendons into bone.
So the magic of the intercept smash just vaporizes.
The absolute microsecond, the shuttle crosses behind the coronal plane of your body, yes.
This triggers what the sources call the gold standard correction rule.
The rule is a biological imperative. As long as you have the footwork to keep the falling shuttle physically in front of your chest's center line, the no-turn side stance is a divine gift.
It provides speed, safety, and continuous pressure.
But the millisecond your brain calculates that the shuttle is going to pass behind your body, you must instantly abandon the rigid turret strategy. You must hit the emergency release valve.
You have to revert to a full turning, pivoting motion. A traditional heavy smash or a deep defensive clear mechanic.
Exactly. You have to physically turn your hips and chest to get your torso underneath and behind the shuttle again, reestablishing that scapular plane.
It's a profound realization. What this really means is that your skeletal structure is the ultimate dictator of your technique.
It's the boss.
You can be incredibly clever. You can invent these beautiful, hyper-efficient muscular shortcuts like the intercept smash by bending the rules of traditional follow-through. But you can never, ever break the hard limitations of the human skeleton.
No, the joint can only tolerate what the joint was evolved to tolerate. Anatomy holds veto power over strategy.
Anatomy dictates technique. The player who fights their anatomy loses, either in a weak shot or a torn tendon.
Exactly.
Now, up to this point, we've been entirely focused on the backcourt, swinging at high shuttles, generating massive downward power. You would think that this intense biological obsession with keeping the shoulder joint comfortable and perfectly aligned in the scapular plane is only a problem when you're jumping and swinging wildly overhead.
You would think so.
But the source material takes a massive left turn here. It reveals that this exact same subconscious biological instinct, the desperate need to protect the shoulder, creates a massive, deeply frustrating, beautiful trap at the complete opposite end of the court.
We are shifting theaters. From the soaring, high-altitude artillery strikes of the backcourt down to the razor-thin, microsecond knife fights directly at the net.
The net kills.
We are talking about net kills, or linkampiki. And this specific scenario is where the paradox of human instinct is exposed in its cruelest form.
Let's set the physical scene for the learner. You are hovering right at the net. You're low, you're aggressive. The opponent panics and hits a terrible weak shot that floats up just an inch or two over the top of the white net tape.
Your eyes light up.
Your goal is singular. Lunge forward, intercept that shuttle at its highest possible point, and smash it straight down into their floor before they can even blink. A net kill.
But what do 99% of amateur players instinctively, subconsciously do with their feet the moment they go for this kill?
It's almost a universal reflex. As the amateur player raises their racket arm to swat the shuttle downward, they will instinctively pull their dominant foot, their right foot. For a right-handed player backward, stepping slightly behind their left foot.
They are literally taking a step backward to hit a target that is hanging directly in front of them. Tactically, it makes absolutely zero sense.
Why would you retreat from a target you are trying to attack?
Tactically, it's a disaster, but anatomically, to the player's central nervous system, it makes brilliant sense in that split second.
Right, we have to reapply the laws of the scapular plane we just learned.
If you lunge straight forward, square to the net, right foot leading, and you raise your arm up high in front of you to swat sharply downward, what is happening in the shoulder joint?
It gets jammed. The chest muscle, the pectoral, is contracting and pulling the arm inward. The angle of the torso is restricting the humerus. The shoulder feels tight, pinched, and weak.
The biomechanics of a straightforward downward swat are naturally cramped. But the brain knows a trick.
Oh, the brain remembers the backcourt.
The moment the player drops that right foot backward, they introduce a micro-rotation to their pelvis. The right hip drops back. That rotation travels up the spine, and suddenly, the right shoulder drops back a few inches.
They have created a microside-facing posture.
And just like magic, the space opens up.
The glenohumeral joint is flooded with clearance. The arm slips perfectly back into the center of the comfortable scapular plane. The shoulder impingement vanishes.
Performing a violent downward smashing motion suddenly feels frictionless, deeply powerful, and entirely natural.
The sources translate this feeling literally. They say it feels incredibly comfortable to the player. The brain gets a hit of dopamine. It says, yes, this posture feels strong, therefore it must be right.
But the source material ruthlessly dismantles this feeling. They call it a trap because at the elite level, that comfortable little micro step backward contains two absolute fatal flaws that will cost you the point every single time you do it.
In high-performance athletics, comfort is often the enemy of optimal execution. The first fatal flaw of this instinctual step backward is the catastrophic loss of spatial distance.
We're talking about almost half a meter of lost reach. The sources are very specific about this geometry.
Let's visualize the human frame as a geometry problem. When you drop your right foot backward and rotate your shoulder, your entire torso is pulled away from the net.
You retreat by roughly 30 to 50 centimeters. Now, in the backcourt, if a shuttle is falling from 20 feet in the air, pulling your body back half a meter isn't a big deal. You have time as it falls.
But at the net, the shuttle is barely peaking over a 1.5-meter net tape, and it is immediately accelerating toward the floor due to gravity.
It's falling fast, and the window to hit it is microscopic.
I think about it like trying to catch a glass of water that has just been knocked off the edge of a table. If you see the glass falling, and your brain says, hold on, let me take half a step backward so I can get a more comfortable, powerful swing of my arm to catch it. The glass is already shattered on the kitchen tile by the time your hand sweeps through the air.
You needed to be closer, not more comfortable.
That analogy perfectly captures the time-space compression at the net. By pulling the dominant foot back, the player physically pulls their contact point backward and downward.
A shuttle that could have been intercepted aggressively high above the tape, allowing for a lethal downward trajectory, is now dropping below the level of the net.
The player is suddenly forced to scoop the shuttle upward to get it over the tape, completely neutralizing their own attack. They rob themselves of a kill, purely to soothe their shoulder joint.
That's the spatial flaw. But the second fatal flaw is even more structurally devastating. The comfortable net stance completely annihilates the body's kinetic chain for movement.
We have to look at the role of the dominant leg in badminton footwork. For a right-handed player, the right leg is not just a support strut. It is simultaneously your heavy braking system and your explosive accelerator.
When you lunge violently toward the net to intercept a shot, that right foot must be thrown aggressively forward. The heel strikes the ground, acting as a massive biological brake to absorb your forward momentum and prevent your upper body from crashing into the net.
It absorbs the shock.
It absorbs the shock, the quadriceps load up eccentrically like a massive coiled spring, and the instant the shot is hit, that spring violently decompresses, launching the player's center of mass backward, recovering them to the center of the court for the next shot.
The forward right foot is the engine of the entire lower body kinetic chain.
So if your right foot is tracked horizontally behind your left foot simply because you wanted your shoulder to feel comfortable for a split second,
Your kinetic chain is dead. You are structurally cemented to the floor. Your center of gravity is awkwardly trapped between your legs, or worse, falling backward away from the shot.
if you hit the net kill and by some miracle the opponent reflexively blocks it back over, you are a statue. You have absolutely zero biological mechanism to push off and retrieve their block.
You traded your entire lower body mobility for upper body comfort.
This brings us to the ultimate paradox of the entire deep dive. How do we square this circle?
We have a direct violent conflict between the upper body and the lower body. The upper body's nervous system is screaming, I need the right foot backward to open up the shoulder joint so I can swing powerfully.
And the lower body's tactical system is screaming, I need the right foot aggressively forward so I can break my momentum and recover my court position.
You literally cannot satisfy both demands using standard anatomical posture. If the foot is forward, the shoulder is pinched. If the shoulder is free, the foot is backward.
It presents itself as an unsolvable biomechanical puzzle, a physical contradiction.
But elite professional athletes have reverse engineered a solution. And what is truly mind-bending about their solution is that they fix this massive conflict between the right arm and the right leg without actually using the arm or the leg at all.
They introduce a biomechanical hack centered entirely around the rapid manipulation of the core abdominal muscles.
This is the grand finale of the source material, the ultimate elite net hack. The text introduces a concept called folding the body, or in the original terminology, zé-timé.
If we translate that literally, it means folding the torso or crunching the core.
The fold is the biomechanical bridge that satisfies both systems. It allows the elite player to maintain the absolute perfect tactical lower body stance right foot lunged aggressively forward, acting as a brake, while simultaneously providing the upper body with the precise anatomical geometry and shoulder comfort it desperately craves.
Okay, I need to visualize the mechanics of this. How on earth does crunching your stomach muscles fix a pinched shoulder and stop you from hitting the net?
The sources outline 3 distinct, simultaneous mechanisms that trigger the moment the player executes the core fold. Let's start with mechanism 1, downward suppression.
Set the scene. The player is lunging forward. The right foot is planted aggressively ahead. The shuttle is popping up. Normally, the instinct here is to violently snap the wrist and swing the arm downward to kill the shuttle.
But with the fold technique,
With the fold, the arm swing is almost an afterthought. The microsecond the racket is positioned above the shuttle, the player violently and explosively contracts their rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscles.
they perform a high-speed, intense crunch in midair during the lunge.
This violent muscular contraction physically yanks the player's entire upper torso, their chest, and their shoulders downward by maybe 10 to 15 centimeters in an instant.
They aren't swinging a racket, they are dropping their entire upper body mass onto the shuttlecock.
Precisely. They convert their linear forward momentum into a massive downward capping force. The mass of the torso does the heavy lifting.
This is critical because if you try to generate all that downward force purely by violently snapping your wrist at the net, the angle of the racket face inevitably points too far down.
You end up slamming the shuttle straight into the white tape on your own side. The abdominal fold provides heavy, abrasive downward power without altering the delicate angle of the wrist.
It's like replacing a swinging baseball bat with the suspension system of a car bottoming out. The whole chassis just drops heavy.
That solves the power issue without wrist strain.
But what about the momentum? If I violently crunch my upper body weight forward and downward while lunging at the net, wouldn't my momentum just throw my torso, my arm and my racket straight into the net mesh for a foul? How does the body stop that crash?
That is mechanism 2, the safety brake. And this relies on pure Newtonian physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. When you forcefully contract your abdominals to fold your heavy upper torso forward and downward, the biomechanics of the human frame require a counterbalance to keep you from toppling over.
As the chest aggressively crunches forward, the pelvis and the hips are naturally and forcefully pushed backward.
Ah, it's a biological counterweight.
Exactly. The core fold creates an automatic internal emergency brake. That backward thrust of the heavy pelvis instantly arrests the forward momentum of the lunge.
It physically anchors the body, instantly freezing the shoulder and the arm, stopping the racket head from following through into the net mesh.
If you ever watch professional badminton and marvel at how they can violently strike a shuttle at the net, yet their racket head magically freezes dead in the air, just 1 inch from the net tape that's not arm strength, stopping the swing.
Their arm isn't stopping the racket. Their pelvis is pulling their entire skeleton backward, acting as a parachute.
Yes. The hit and rebound aesthetic of elite net play is generated entirely by the core folding and the pelvis acting as a counter anchor.
That is incredibly cool. So we have heavy downward power without using the wrist, and we have an automatic pelvic safety brake to prevent net fouls. But we still haven't solved the core paradox.
How does crunching your abs fix the fact that my right foot is forward and my right shoulder feels pinched and uncomfortable? That brings us to mechanism 3.
Mechanism 3 is the true geometric hack. It is the ultimate fix for the shoulder. When a player executes this violent abdominal fold, they're not just bending straight down over their belly button, they naturally introduce a slight spinal rotation.
They tilt their chest forward, downward, and slightly away from their racket arm. They angle their upper spine.
Wait, let me picture this. By tilting the spine away from the arm.
By folding and tilting the spine, they fundamentally alter the orientation of the shoulder socket relative to the humerus bone. Even though the right leg is aggressively locked forward in the lunge and the hips are squared forward, the specific tilt of the upper spine physically pushes the right shoulder joint into a safe, open angle.
They recreate the scapular plane purely through spinal manipulation.
Yes. They artificially open up the subacromial space. The arm suddenly has all the geometric clearance it needs to swing freely, powerfully, and without a single degree of impingement, completely bypassing the fact that the lower body is still locked in the forward foot tactical stance.
That is absolute genius. To synthesize this entire incredibly complex sequence for you, the learner, I want you to close your eyes unless you're driving and visualize this ultimate perfected net posture.
Imagine a pro athlete intercepting a shot at the tape. Their lower body is rigid, locked in a wide, aggressive lunge. The right foot is planted boldly forward, acting as a massive biological shock absorber and a coiled spring ready to fire them backward.
Their racket arm is raised high in front of them, but it isn't swinging wildly. It's held like a rigid structural bracket.
The actual lethal execution of the shot is entirely internal. It is a violent crunch of the abdominal muscles that drops the immense weight of the torso onto the shuttle, while simultaneously thrusting the pelvis backward to slam on the brakes and tilting the spine to magically open the shoulder joint. It's a symphony of internal levers.
It beautifully ties together every single concept we've explored today. It proves that at the absolute highest echelons of athletic performance, the sport isn't really about your arms or your legs. It is an intense, high-speed negotiation with your own skeletal structure.
It is about managing your center of gravity, outsmarting your nervous system's desire for lazy comfort, and unlocking these hidden anatomical cheat codes to maximize kinetic output while preserving joint integrity.
It has been a seriously wild journey going through your notes today. We started by completely unlearning the fundamental logic of the massive, full-body smash, realizing that sometimes a truncated front-facing stick smash, relying purely on the rotational velocity of the forearm, is infinitely deadlier.
We unpack the deep neurology of the time lag illusion, discovering how the somatosensory cortex literally lies to us, conflating the long, comfortable feeling of preparation with the microscopic reality of impact, leading amateurs to chase false muscle memories.
We unlocked the bizarre mechanics of the intercept smash. We saw how freezing the core, refusing to turn the hips, and relying on the tension of the rhomboids turns the human body into a stable, side-facing artillery turret that sacrifices raw mass for relentless, perfectly balanced, rapid-fire attacks.
We explored the strict physical boundaries of the glenohumeral joint, learning the iron rule of the scapular plane, and understanding that human anatomy is always the supreme judge of any technique.
Which brought us down to the net, and that beautifully frustrating paradox. The body begging, pleading to step backward for shoulder comfort, the tactical reality of the game demanding we step aggressively forward, and the violent abdominal fold providing the ultimate biomechanical compromise.
I think understanding these hidden internal levers doesn't just make someone a better athlete or a more observant fan of biomechanics. I think it fundamentally alters how you view your own physical intelligence. It exposes the incredibly sneaky, clever, and sometimes detrimental ways your nervous system tries to protect you from yourself.
It really does reframe our relationship with our bodies. Our physiology is constantly, relentlessly seeking the path of least anatomical resistance. It craves homeostasis and comfort.
In the context of a high-speed sport, as we've seen time and time again today, this craving for comfort sometimes tricks us into catastrophic habits, like stepping backward at the net. But sometimes, when you understand the geometry of that comfort and consciously harness it, it leads to elite-level efficiency, like the tensioned local bow of the intercept smash.
And I think that leaves us with a truly fascinating, provocative thought to take away from all this biomechanical deep diving. We've just spent an hour dissecting how the body's hidden subconscious desire for anatomical comfort completely warps and alters athletic technique, often making us perform worse without us even knowing it.
So, zoom out. What about the rest of your life? Think about your daily routine. Think about the way you sit at your desk right now, the way you carry your groceries, or the way you play a completely different sport on the weekends. What movements are you performing highly inefficiently or even dangerously right now, simply because your nervous system is secretly tricking you into taking the most comfortable anatomical shortcut?
It is a question worth agonizing over the next time you feel a twinge in your shoulder or realize your posture feels a little too comfortable.
I want to extend a massive thank you to you, the learner, for providing such incredibly rich, deeply technical, and thought-provoking source material for this custom deep dive. Unpacking the hidden physics and the sneaky neurology of the human body with you has been an absolute blast. Until next time, keep questioning what you feel and keep diving deep.
And just remember, your brain might be writing a very compelling, very comfortable story about how your body moves.
But sometimes, you have to completely ignore the illusion to find out what's really going on in the weird, muddy waters of human biomechanics.